Now, normalizing is the exact opposite. Normalizing is more like, maybe I should get a house in the suburbs. Okay? Which is, by the way, the thing that Joel and I just did. And Joel is a creative subtype. Is like, they're going to change me. I'm not going to be the same.
Some van's going to pull up and I'm going to be like, put through something for 3 days and I'll come out all normal.
Like a Clockwork Orange situation
I'm
with
so
the
terrified.
HOA.
I don't know what's going to happen. Hey, welcome back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we're coming to you with a live studio audience here in Nashville, Tennessee. I guess I forgot to say excited studio audience, which is awesome. People came from all over the world. We've already done one podcast together, but we thought we would create a second one together because, again, people came from all over, all the way from Turkey, over in the UK, all over the United States. People are here to be part of this live podcast experience. Now, at the end of a podcast, if you're listening back at home, watching on YouTube or whatever, you often hear us say at the end of a show, you've been the third person in this conversation, but you haven't had a microphone and we want to hear from you. Well, tonight, you actually are here. A lot of people are here with us live, so we thought we could hear from you, questions, comments, things like that. So let's just kick it off. Let's just jump right into it tonight and create this experience together. Who has something? They have a question. Yes, right here. Let me get your microphone on. What is your name?
Ashley.
Ashley. Did you have to check your notes for that, or did you already know that? Because I saw you look down. Just double checking, Ashley. What's your best fit type?
ENFP.
And where are you from? San
Francisco Bay Area.
You came all the way from California for this?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Give her a hand.
Thank you.
So, do you have a question?
I do.
Okay, let's go.
How can an individualistic ENFP bond with their traditional mom knows best ESFJ mom? My mom is now walking on eggshells so she doesn't offend me, but I don't feel known, accepted, or supported.
Do you have an example maybe of this showing up in your life, like in a real way?
She said enough things that I feel triggered easily because she's so conventional and she doesn't understand my lifestyle preferences. So she doesn't ask curious questions, and I feel like she doesn't know me.
Yeah. That is, I believe, one of the most important applications of type, is to be able to understand that somebody else is pre-wired from birth, most likely. We don't know that definitively, but I suspect that our type is inborn. We're pre-wired to see the world in a certain way. And I think we're not just pre-wired to see the world in a certain way. I think we're pre-wired to steward certain things, aspects of life that are important to us, that we focus on, and that we believe that we're good representatives of these things. And I think the first two functions really are that element. So think about it this way. Your mom, who has ESFJ preferences, her first dominant, what we call the driver cognitive function, is extroverted feeling. We also call it harmony. It is her job to make sure that everybody has their needs met and has a sense of high morale, but also honors social expectations, that we all behave in a way where it greases the wheels of general interactions. Like, that's her job. Her job is to make sure that that's represented, and she's a steward of that. Her second function, auxiliary, what we call the co-pilot, is introverted sensing or memory, which is an awareness of the importance of where we've come from. What are the things that we have already understood and figured out and are important aspects of our culture and ourselves? And what should we not be forgetting? And it's her job to steward that. In fact, that second function is also called a parent function. So she is in particular going to be using it in your behalf, reminding you of the things that need to be remembered, right? Where you came from, the traditions you came from, the things that make you feel a sense of rootedness and continuity and security. Whereas you, who have ENFP preferences, have two totally different assignments, right? Your job is to steward extroverted intuition, or what we call exploration. That's your first function, which is possibilities, disruption, change, looking at things radically different, understanding all the possibilities, asking questions like, where would we go if we didn't have to start from here, right? And that's your job. It's your almost like your sacred cosmic stewardship to ensure that people remember how important that is. And then you supplement it with introverted feeling or authenticity, which is an awareness of what's right for the individual, right? What makes sense for you as a person, your lived experience, all the things that mean something to you. And that's your sacred charge, is to ensure that people are reminded of that. So you have totally different karmic responsibilities, right? And who's gonna vie for supremacy on that, right? Who gets to say what's the most important element to be reminded of, right? And so part of understanding type is understanding that we come pre-wired with almost like a built-in purpose, right? To remind people of these things that are super duper important. Now, where it gets difficult is when you are supposed to have this like really bonded relationship, which is the bond between mother and daughter is archetypally a very bonded relationship, very important. And we see a lot of images about how that's supposed to be, they're supposed to be tight and close and connected. And then we see lots of examples of when that doesn't necessarily pan out that way. But where type comes in and is really, I think, a beautiful instrument is remembering that person is making sure that something that you don't want to have to think about is handled, right? It's their cosmic responsibility to ensure that nobody forgets the importance of social obligations, social equilibrium, harmony, conflict resolution, and where we came from and who we are based on where we came from and the things that are important. You don't have to worry about that. She's got it on lock. She's got that covered. And that's good because you're not particularly interested in being a steward of those things, right? Now, the challenge is when there's an insistence about it, right? No, you need to think that this is important. But I think there's something to be said when we can put language to the challenge to honor the other person and say, I see it. I see what your responsibility is. I'm so glad you've got that represented. I'm so glad I don't have to worry about that. I'm so glad that you're doing that in my behalf. And following up with, if the person is willing to receive it, here are the things that are my karmic responsibility. Here's my stewardship. These are the things I'm supposed to be paying attention to. And this is how they show up in my life, right? I'm a steward of extroverted intuition or exploration in whatever way you personally are, because it's going to be unique to you, how you are a representative of that function. And I'm also representative of authenticity or introverted feeling in this way. And that's my job. I honor your job. I don't want to step on any toes. I'm so glad you have that covered. And here's mine. Can you reciprocate? Can you honor mine as well? Now, I have absolutely no idea how your mom would respond to that. She might be like, what the hell are you talking about? But
what do you think? What do you think would happen?
What do you think?
She would say, there's something in the fridge for you to eat. She goes super censor. Yeah.
Right.
She would warmly receive it, but she might not understand. But I've seen her have glimmers of understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you don't have to use phrases like karmic responsibility. That's just my stuff. Right. Right. That might not fly. But it's a communication to indicate that I think what it is all of us we recorded a podcast one time where we talked about how types say I love you. And in that podcast, we posited that basically every interaction is somebody saying, do you love me? Do you love me? And I think when the person says, yes, I love you, we relax. Now, sometimes we conflate, do you love me with, do you love the things I love? Do you love the things that I have decided are important? And when we say, I don't love those things, then we take it personally and say, well, then you must not love me. If we can clear real clarity around, you're not the things you like, you're not the things you care about, and I'm not the things I like, and I'm not the things I care about. So if your mom doesn't like the things that you like, and she doesn't love the things that are in your life, smushing those together and going, well, then you must not love me, is not exactly accurate, right? In the same way that you not loving the things she loves doesn't mean you don't love her. So getting real clear on that, of the distinction between the things in my life, the things that I'm stewarding, the things that I'm responsible for, and me as a human being. And recognizing that everything she does that drives you crazy is actually her saying, do you love me? And there's an opportunity to say, I love you, because I love that you want me to love you. I love that you're showing up for me in a way that maybe doesn't completely serve my needs, but I love that you are showing up at all. I love that. Thank you so much. And most people will receive that gratitude. They're looking for gratitude. Now, this is very touchy-feely. This is a very nice way of saying all of this in day-to-day scrapes and conversations and conflict. It's hard to do that when you're like throwing things at each other, etc. But it's a willingness. It's that principle of seek first to understand before being understood. Seek first to show love before needing to receive love. And particularly in a family relationship, that's all we're looking for, right? It's our business to be loved. So can you think of ways that you could front load that you could show love first, considering all the things I just mentioned, that you believe would land with her?
What do you think?
I think just listening to what she has to say, offering her compliments, little gestures just to show appreciation of any kind, refraining from criticism, I think that would mean a lot to her. Just calling her or texting her.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. And the other thing is, and here's something for you, because of course we can't change the other person. That's the one thing. No matter how sophisticated we get around type, that doesn't mean that it will resolve all conflicts, because we can't control the other individual. But I will say this. My suspicion is that your little introverted sensing, your fourth function, your inferior, is leaning on her introverted sensing as her auxiliary or second function more than you realize. Do you know what I mean? And then, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, she just caretakes a lot. She takes care of a lot of different responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's probably not just logistical. I bet it's energetic. I bet she gives you a sense of home.
I wish she did.
Oh,
in a way. Yeah, I feel like I have to protect myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Protect yourself from what?
Just even being in the same room with her just like triggers my nervous system, because I'm used to previous criticism, her just trying to change me or my behavior to be how she wants me to be. I guess what she feels is best for me, but does not align with myself.
I believe you, and I suspect I'm not wrong. Meaning that you probably do have a lot of boundaries up. You probably do have you're vigilant. And imagine she just went away. She's just gone. She's not there anymore. Do you think that would be a little destabilizing to you?
I did this is a little bit off topic, but I did an Enneagram comparison, and she and I are literally Kris Jenner and Kim Kardashian. It would be the worst to have that mother wound, because I'm an Enneagram 3. If she ever tragically died or something, it would be like, I can't even imagine it.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
I'm a sexual 3.
Yeah.
On the Enneagram.
I am too.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Right. Yeah. All that self-deceit. All that lying to ourselves, right? So then you're like on a higher layer. That's, I believe you're right. I believe she doesn't give you warm, cuddly feelings, but there's probably a sense of rootedness, right? When I say home, I mean like roots. I mean like a feeling like there's something stable in my life.
She has my back.
Yeah. And just, she's a connection to your ancestry and your past and like where you came from and whatever family traditions are available. And when we're younger ENPs, that doesn't mean as much. But when we get older, it means a lot. It's really important to have that sense of rootedness. Yeah. So there's a service she's providing for you that's probably energetic that you might want to meditate on a little bit. Right. And even though I believe you, I believe that there's a vigilance and a defensiveness there. See if you can tap into gratitude for that piece and make that gratitude if it can hit your authentic introverted feeling, if you can truly feel that sense of gratitude, her extroverted feeling will slurp it up. She'll feel it, because that's the thing about extroverted feeling. It's feeling what you're feeling, not what it's feeling. Right? So if you come up with defensiveness and vigilance, there's a part of her extroverted feeling that's going, right? And now she's vigilant and defensive, right? And that's all of us that have extroverted feeling. It's just how we work. It's like we have to get over it. It's a thing. But if you show up with gratitude, and I would do a test. I could be totally wrong. I don't know, you guys. But show up with that love, gratitude front-loaded and see if it alters. I mean, but of course it has to be real. It has to be deep in your introverted feeling. It can't be a performance. But if it's true and real, see if her extroverted feeling slurps it up and see if it sort of changes the quality of the interaction. Does that track?
Yes, I just have to get her to, we're going to turn off all the screens because she's just addicted to these things now that she's retired. So we have to be present with each other, have a agreement on social etiquette when we do spend time with each other.
Right. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. All right. So the general, how does an ESFJ mom and an ENFP kid learn to accept each other? It's like, well, it sounds like there's some habits and behaviors that are probably not the best. But yeah, see if you can get around that. All right. So I know your individual situation and circumstance is a lot more complex than what I just painted. And on a very abstract level, on a very high level, can your extroverted intuition sort of piece together a couple things that might help in the interaction?
This was excellent advice that I never considered before. So thank you for all this insight.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Ashley. Give her a hand. All right, who's next?
Reality is always more complex than type, right?
Especially. Oh, we have somebody over here. Hold on, let me make sure your microphone is on. I do my job. What is your name?
My name's Deanna.
Deanna. And where are you from, Deanna?
I am from Atlanta, although I'm originally from Nashville. I was born and raised in Nashville.
Let's come back home.
Yeah.
For this episode.
Very strange after so many years. It's changed a lot.
And do you, what are your best fit type preferences?
INFP.
And do you have a question today?
Yes. I am interested in the relationship between trauma and type, and I know that is a huge topic area, so I'll try to nuance it a little bit. Two ways we can think about that question. One, how might it affect the order or the strength maybe in which the different functions manifest themselves? Like I tend to think that the dominant expresses itself early and the auxiliary and so on like that. So that's one way of thinking about it. Another might be, how does trauma affect our understanding of our own type, our ability to identify our own best fit type?
So when we talk about trauma, just make sure we're clear on what we're talking about. I typically identify trauma as something that happened in my past that my personality or my personhood didn't have the maturity to understand how to deal with it. And so I just kind of compartmentalized it, but now I'm carrying it with me. Is that our shared definition?
I'm thinking about it like maybe a single event, but also something like complex trauma, like trauma over a period of time, living with emotionally distant parents, for instance, or chronic abuse, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I recently heard something that I wish I could source, and I keep saying that I wish I could source this, and people keep giving me sources that are similar, but I don't remember. So whoever originally said this, you're brilliant, and thank you for saying it. That when we're children, and there is a conflict between being able to be fully ourselves, or having to deny ourselves in order to win the favor of our caretakers, it's not even a contest. We will deny ourselves every time. Because as children, they're our survival strategy. We will say no to ourselves, and it doesn't matter what personality type we are. We will deny ourselves in order to gain the favor of our caretakers. And if they ask that of us, whether it's conscious or unconscious for them, it means that we are going to sublimate certain parts of our personality, even if they're really strong for us. So a person's dominant function, and this happens sometimes, and you can tell because the person is usually very sad. Like they have this sense of depression that sort of clings to them throughout their entire life. But if our dominant function is unacceptable to our caretakers, we will do everything we can to make it as small as possible. Now, the challenge with that is we can't ever fully stamp it out. It's our first function. It is how we see ourselves. And so I call it like the life finds a way principle. It's like the one weed that's like sticking up in the concrete jungle, right? Our dominant function will find a way to manifest, but it usually does it in all these little sneaky ways, right? Because it has to get fed. And when that happens, we're usually very sad, and we're usually very quiet, and we usually hope nobody notices when we're getting our dominant needs met. Now, take that and contrast it with somebody who has the same dominant function, raised in a house that nurtures it and loves it and celebrates it and encourages it at every turn. This is a big flourishing English garden, right? Full of variety and color and texture and beauty. And so life will find a way, but they definitely are not going to appear to be the same bird. In fact, they might not even look like the same function. And that's one of the reasons why trauma, or at least the suppression of our functions, can cause us to mistype, because it's not going to look like everybody else. It's not going to look the same as people who had it celebrated and fostered and encouraged. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it will definitely, it won't necessarily change certain aspects. Like, take, for example, we were talking before about how each of the first four functions are dominant, auxiliary, tertiary, and inferior, what we call the driver, the co-pilot, the 10-year-old, and the 3-year-old. They go in a descending order of certainty. And I don't think that ever changes. I think we will always have a sense of certainty in our first function. And we might expect somebody to do something bad to us when we use that function, so we might be really vigilant. But nobody, like, it's hard to ever get somebody to undermine themselves with their first function, right? It's hard to make the person go, oh, I must be really bad at this. We'll always think we're good at it in some way, but we'll have to sneak it, right? And so that quality I don't think changes. I don't think certainty ever changes. But what we're allowed to show, how we're allowed to show it, what order that we can show certain things. Like take, for example, people who have intuition as a second function, like INPs and ENJs. It is not uncommon for them to very much suppress their intuition if it's unacceptable in their family. That's very common. And that function isn't as insistent as the first one. So what ends up happening in those situations is that they go into a phenomena that is called a loop, which is that they lean more heavily on their third or tertiary, what we call the 10-year-old function, in order to do the same job that second function is supposed to do. The challenge is that now they're missing a part of themselves that is important. In fact, that has the energy of a parent. How they serve other people, how they show up for other people, how they give their gifts to the world, how they interface with others in the best way, that will be mitigated. In fact, you'll see somebody who kind of looks like they're in survival all the time, that has very little to give to other people, that is trying to sneak what they can do, and is just generally low energy. So trauma manifests, and sometimes they'll end up in what's called a grip experience. And grip experience is when we are overly obedient to the messages of our inferior or fourth function, or what we call the 3-year-old. That grip can get so persistent that it gets identity level. And that's another time that we mistype. And when we have such a relationship to the grip that we start to think that that's our type, that can happen as well. So trauma doesn't alter our type necessarily. I don't think it does anyway. I mean, there's nothing definitive, so don't write that down. That's just a personal opinion, but I don't think it changes our type.
Stop writing.
Yeah, that's right. I don't think it alters our certainty around each of the functions. I think our first function is still going to be the place we're most certain. The second function, we're going to have modest certainty. Third function, we're still going to have insecurity, and we're waiting for the head pat to let us know that's okay. And the fourth function, we're still going to be deeply uncertain. So that doesn't change. But the variety found in it, the willingness to show it to others, the ability to show up for other people using these functions, all of that is now on the table, and that will definitely change. So I think trauma affects us a lot. Now, sometimes we experience traumas that have nothing to do with our functions, meaning that our functions are really actually not that impacted by them because there weren't messages to those specific functions. And if that's the case, then it's not that the trauma changed the function, it's that how we deal with the trauma is through those functions. And so that can sometimes show up as well. So it is a big can of worms. Type in trauma is enormous, but it definitely impacts us, particularly when the message we got is that we're unacceptable. That's the one that impacts our functions the most.
Thank you for the question. Appreciate it. Give her a hand. Who's next? We got a question over here. Okay. What is your name?
My name's Rebecca.
Rebecca. And where are you from, Rebecca?
Memphis, Tennessee.
Memphis. So you're in the state, but it was the other side of the state.
Yeah,
The Memphis
little
side.
bitty drive.
And what is your best fit type?
I am an ENTJ.
Okay. And what's the question you have today?
I have really been enjoying the podcast series you guys have been doing on Dario Nardi's subtypes and how that affects career. I am having a really hard time determining what my subtype is. I know that I'm moving away from dominant, and I understand the patterns between that you're judging, if your judging function is analytic or if your perceiving function is analytic, and what that leads to. I'm just curious if you guys could suss out a little bit more on how to determine what your subtype is.
So you're not identifying as having a dominant subtype?
I'm not, and I think when I hear you guys talk about that, I'm like, oh yeah, that used to be me. I'm like, yeah, that's what made me an ENTJ, and I'm moving away from that a little bit, and I'm not sure which of the other subtypes I'm moving towards.
Yeah. So what's really awesome about the subtype theory is that it's the nurture part of type, not the nature part. So again, I suspect that we are born with our best fit type preferences. So if you're an ENTJ, you're just going to be an ENTJ for the rest of your life. Congratulations.
Yay!
Yeah.
Well, ENTJs are awesome. Come on.
All the ENTPs are super jelly.
Oh, it's jealousy,
Yeah.
not hostility. I like that. Okay.
Oh, they get so much done. They're so good at it. What's wrong with us? We're losers. So, no. I have type patriotism. ENTP is definitely the best. I'm just kidding. So, and also I'm kidding about that, kind of. So, what's nice about subtypes is that we get to visit all of them throughout a lifetime if we choose to, and so knowing you're moving away from dominant, it's like it's not really about identifying the subtype you are. I think actually the way you ask that is really good, because it's like, all I know is that I'm moving into another aspect of myself. So I think what I'm actually hearing you ask is, which of the subtypes am I moving toward, and how would I know?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So part of the theory is, and I think we've said this in the careers podcast as well, think of it as a quadrant with dominant in the top left hand, creative in the top right hand, normalizing in the bottom left hand, and harmonizing in the bottom right hand. And the theory is that, and we don't know this to be true, it's all pretty new, but the theory is that we don't actually go diagonally. That's a much bigger reach for us. We usually go either across or down. So if you're moving away from the dominant subtype, it is very likely that you're moving into either creative or normalizing. Now, those are very different subtypes, okay?
And the reason is you're only flipping one function.
Yes.
Right? You're not trying to flip both of them to the analytic or holistic side.
Exactly.
And this is any position, not just your position, but your dominance would be the two analytics.
Exactly. So it's very unlikely that you're moving into harmonizing. That's very unlikely. Now, if you were creative, it would be very unlikely that you'd be moving into normalizing, and so on and so forth. So there are certain qualities and characteristics of a creative versus a normalizing. And one of the biggest is that creative subtypes tend to rock the boat, right? They get in a little bit of trouble. They're creatives. And so they're looking for opportunities to live outside of a normal life. They're looking for ways to express and to show up and to perform and to be creative, right? Free of all of the expectations that everybody else has for them. And so because of that, they have a tendency to kind of poke the bear, kick the hornet's nest a little bit, all right? Particularly if they lead with extroverted thinking or effectiveness, okay? Now, normalizing is the exact opposite. Normalizing is more like, maybe I should get a house in the suburbs. Okay? Which is, by the way, the thing that Joel and I just did. And Joel is a creative subtype. Is like, they're going to change me. I'm not going to be the same.
Some van's going to pull up and I'm going to be like, put through something for 3 days and I'll come out all normal.
Like a clockwork orange situation
I'm
with
so
the
terrified.
HOA.
I don't know what's going to happen.
So he's like really weirded out. I'm harmonizing. I'm like, it's going to be fine. All right. We'll be good. I've been normalizing before. So that's normalizing is a little bit more like, appearing as if you are settling into being a good, responsible citizen. All right. So it's a little bit more laid back. It's a little more reserved. Usually it's a bit more of an introverted space, even for the introverts. Normalizing introverts or introverted types are the most introverted of the introvert types. So if you're normalizing, ISFP, you're going to be one of the most introverted ISFPs. Whereas if you're a creative, it's the opposite. You're almost going to appear as if you might be an ESFP. So are you heading towards something that's a little bit more damn the man and screw this, I'm going to do whatever I want to, and I'm going to go live my free life, and here I go? Or are you like, you know what, maybe I should just buckle down and just sort of, do this thing and figure it out and do it really well and be there for my family. And
what would you say?
I want to say the creative one. It's funny because my family life is moving towards what if we did move to the suburbs? But I'm just like, what if I'm a stay-at-home dog mom and write books and so.
So what it sounds like is you actually have a choice.
Yeah.
You have a choice to make. And by the way, either one is fine. I mean, I know that he's always normalizing, but actually
Can't do it.
Normalizing has a lot going for it, honestly. And all of society is built up of a lot of people who chose normalizing, and we all benefit from it. So I'm the champion of the normalizing subtype. I actually think normalizing is a perfectly viable choice.
Okay.
Creative subtype.
Do it.
So it's honestly just where you want to go. What do you want next?
Well, it sounds like that's the conflict, right? You've kind of got this path choice in front of you.
Yeah, my partner is an ESFJ, so he's also very normalizing ESFJ too. So I've got influence in that direction, but I feel a little resistant toward that. A big part of it is appealing, but I'm not sure.
I will say if you head towards normalizing, the two of you will probably have a better experience of it. And if you head towards creative, it's going to create conflict.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Well, and because what's weird is that creative types tend to stick with creatives and normalizings tend to stick with normalizings, but dominant and harmonizing, they find each other. All right. So it's actually the dominant and the harmonizing that like that polarity. But that's one of the reasons why you're like, wow, those two types are very interesting combination. But then you find out they're both creatives, and that's actually where they bond. So a dopamine chaser is going to be a little nerve-wracking to a serotonin chaser. And a serotonin chaser is going to be a little boring to a dopamine chaser. And so that would be the conflict if you headed that direction.
We've got a lot to work out.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you want to go towards creative.
Yeah, that's always been my bent. My career started with theater, and then I moved toward teaching, and now I don't know what I'm doing next. But it's there's a lot of options.
I'm not saying it's not a curse. You can work it out. You can figure it out. Yeah. It's just going and knowing what the challenges are already going to be. What is it? Prepared. Forewarned is. Prepare. Forewarned. Wait, what is it? Something about forewarning. Forewarned is forearmed. Thank you, audience.
I've never heard that before. That was literally the first time I've ever heard that. Well, I've never heard that.
It's just been a long day, so I couldn't remember it. But yes, exactly. So you know what you're dealing with if you head that direction.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Give her a hand. All right, we keep rolling along here. Who's next? Oh, we got somebody else coming up. Fantastic. Let's get the microphone ready to go. And what is your name?
Hi, my name's Jessica.
Jessica. Where are you from, Jessica?
Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. You came up to Nashville to join us. Love it.
Yes.
What's your best fit type?
I am an INFJ, and my husband's with me. He's an ISTP.
Uh-oh. You got two people in the house. ISTP, INFJ relationship. That's cool.
Yeah, and we suspect our kids, it's a little early, they're 7 and 5, but we're pretty sure they're an ISFJ and an ISFP. And I come from a background where I share no functions with any of my immediate family members. And so knowing that we don't share our kids' dominant functions, I want to really figure out how I can support them in that and help them feel seen. And so I'm looking for advice on that.
Advice on kids. And maybe do you have, just to give us a visceral example, do you have anything that is a situation you experience with your kids that would be an example for us just to kind of see it in real life? Like not getting it.
Yeah.
Your husband's over here, I think, laughing.
Yeah. Yeah, I could think of examples with both my kids, but like our little one, like she's got to be leading with introverted feeling. And I think that's a place that my husband and I don't usually want to look at. And I don't want to dismiss her feelings or minimize them.
But it's a lot, huh?
It's a lot. They're big feelings about the smallest things.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. And she's expressed things like even when she was like 4, I think she was like, why can't you just let me be me? You know? So it's like, I know that like she feels it and she wants us to be able to make that connection with her and she wants to be seen. So how can we kind of like tap into that and support them?
What's the challenge? Is it disruptive to your lives? Is it you just get annoyed by it? Like what's the problem? Like the actual challenge for you as a mom?
That's a good question. I think I'm just worried from like my own experiences in life of them growing up feeling like, am I seen? Was I seen as a child?
Gotcha.
I think it's just my own like hypervigilance about it.
So it's more of a proactive frame you're coming from, not
Yeah.
this is causing a challenge in our family. We got to figure this out. It's more like, I don't know how to honor her the best. So I want to make sure that we are pouring into our children. And are we doing it right? Is this the right way we should be honoring their functions, the way they're showing, expressing, overdoing it, underdoing it? That's more the question?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for wanting that for your children, right? Thank you for...
If you stay at the mic, we can keep talking to you.
Yeah, feel free to stay at
Sounds
the mic.
good.
Yeah.
I know. All the introverts ask a question.
I know, right?
And they run.
I'm out.
They run for the hills and like, I'm out.
Yep.
It's okay.
This is so you can clarify things when I go too far off the rails. So thank you for wanting that for them, right? That's basically one of the main purposes of type. So thank you. And I, as having been raised by an INFJ mother myself, and I didn't have that different of a personality type from her, but I had enough that was different, that I always felt very seen by her. I always felt like she was really trying to understand who I was when I was growing up. And when I became an adult, that was a totally different issue. But as a child, I felt very seen. And so I think you're not going to have as big of a challenge with that. But I think you're sophisticated enough to hear what I believe your path could probably be to really honor them. And that is get intimate with how these functions develop over time so that you can spot when they're doing the thing they're supposed to be doing versus when they're doing something that's alien and foreign to you but is not healthy for them. So I'm also raising who I suspect a little FP type with introverted feeling, big emotions all the time, right? A lot for me. Right. And especially using extroverted feeling. Right. It's like.
Not too much for me. I love it.
Yeah. Well,
In fact, I amp it up. I'm
Yeah.
like, let's do this.
it's like
It's showtime.
it's in stereo, really. So
Antonia
lot.
describes our house as like living in a musical.
yeah. Yeah.
Like living an embodied
And
musical.
I never really liked musicals, so that's not like a it's like, ooh, I get to live in a musical. I have ENTP preferences. When we had to watch musicals, I was like, oh, but now I get to live in one.
She loves it.
So I know that introverted feeling, the goal of it isn't just expression. The goal of it is to harness it, right? It's to not suppress the emotions. It's to be able to ameliorate them and point them towards certain directions of expression. It's to understand the self, yes, but sometimes introverted feeling just gets bored. And it just amps up those emotions just because it's bored. And yeah, right. So I've got to be able to create a distinction between like, this one's amped up because it's a real one, and I need to honor it and be there with her and let her know that she has total permission to show up in this way, versus that you're just bored. And you're just amping this up because you have nothing else to do. And do I really have to deal with this from you when you're just bored? Go do something, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I say go do something when it's an authentic emotion, I might crush her little soul, and she'll be talking about it in therapy in 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas if I go, yes, express all the things, you bored little FI user, and just amplify them, she's going to get entitled and self-indulgent and be a nightmare for whoever she partners with as an adult. So I'm like, is it therapy, or is it like I'm hearing her partner bitch at me that I was a terrible parent and let her become this person? And I got to figure this out, right?
Yeah, it's kind of my fear.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not necessarily easy.
Yeah.
But if you know the path of how introverted feeling develops, grows, what you can expect, and you kind of get that distinction between like, this is one where you need to know that mom is seeing you and is honoring you, and this is one where you just need to go do something else.
Yeah.
You can start to see, especially your introverted intuition will be able to start seeing the patterns. Does that track?
Yeah.
Okay. And then just know, like, what does sophisticated introverted feeling look like? And talk to people who have this function. Ask them what their path was. Like, what were the different developmental things? What did their parents do to help you feel seen? Or what did they not do that made you not feel seen, or whatever, right?
Right.
And then just kind of get the pattern of it, and just know that every once in a while she's getting your goat.
Yeah.
All right. And then other times when she's not getting your goat, you need to be there for her. So it's getting sensitive to that.
Yeah.
Does that track?
It does. Yeah. And that's with my other daughter with the introverted sensing. I'm like, introverted sensing, holidays, routines, got it.
Yeah.
And that seems to be enough for her. But this is like a little more abstract. And I'm like, like I quickly get overwhelmed by the emotions. I'm like, how do I just like, what's the best way I can show up for her with this? So that makes sense.
Yeah. Introverted sensing feels a little easier, but I will say this. There is one, and this is pointed out by Jonathan, ENFJ Preferences, Jonathan, who's totally brilliant. And I don't know if he's in the room right now.
He's
but
back there. Jonathan Harden.
Jonathan, you're super brilliant. And I want to credit you every time I say this thing because it was just so mind-blowing. There is one thing that introverted intuition can do that is oppressive to introverted sensing. And that is, introverted sensing accepts the reality that they experienced, and that's part of who they are. Introverted intuition, when it looks to the past, is almost always trying to reframe it. And sometimes when introverted sensing is trying to make peace with a situation, introverted intuition will believe it's being helpful by reframing it for the person. And that can actually feel oppressive, almost like you're denying their experience. They don't need a reframe. They just need to accept what happened. So that's one thing I would keep your finger on the pulse of. Is not just reframing every situation. Well, if you see it this way, or what did that person experience, or what if you thought about it in this way?
I do that a lot.
Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to go, that must have been hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
That must have been
makes sense.
hard. And she can go, yeah, it was, or was it a girl? Okay.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Yeah.
Right? So honor that she had the experience and that's part of who she is. And if you reframe it too much, it starts to feel like she's not allowed to have her identity either.
Toxic positivity.
Or toxic reframing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense.
And she'll teach you a thing or two of what it means to accept the past.
Yeah. I could use that.
All right. So that's what I would recommend for those two types.
Awesome.
Does it help?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank
Right.
you. All right. Well, we got somebody over here. So what is your name?
My name is Selena.
Selena. And where are you from, Selena?
I live in Nashville via LA and Mexico. So
That was a long
now
trip.
I'm here.
Yeah.
That was a long trip. So do you have a best fit type preferences?
I am an ESTJ.
ESTJ.
Yes. And my question is coming from my daughter, who is an INFJ, and she got me into this. She knows more. I'm a newbie here. But our miscommunication sometimes. I honestly, I didn't even know all this existed, and I assumed she was like me because I educated her, and surprise, we're like opposites. So do you have strategies that we can work on, or what those miscommunications come from?
So ESTJ, ISFJ relationship.
INFJ.
INFJ.
INFJ, ESTJ.
ESTJ, INFJ. Okay.
Yeah. So when we were talking about shadow functions earlier, all the way at the bottom, the 7th and 8th functions. I mean, I know that you're relatively new, so I don't want to go too deep into that. But those are each other's first 2 functions. You're like almost complete opposites.
Well, and can I just ask, do you have an example or a story of maybe something that would be an example of the dynamic you're speaking to?
So if she's venting, I want to give her a solution so she stops aching. I'm just like, snap out of it, do this. And it's not good. because sometimes she's like, I didn't want you to give me a solution. I just needed you to listen to me. But the way I think of it is like, if you're in pain, let me help you. Get rid of that pain and move on. Yeah, well, thank you.
Well, and for you, I'm guessing like this is the way you show love. Like I'm
Yes.
solving your problems.
Right.
Like, solving problems is how you show love to people, right? I mean, would you identify with that? Is that true?
Yes,
for you?
yes, yes.
And so here you are giving what you would consider your best gift of you bring a problem. I'm going to go to work and help you solve it. We're going to find a solution and get through it. And then she's like, no, I just want the emotion of it to be honored, to be held, to be whatever expressed.
Yeah, and to me it's painful. I'm like, because I don't know how to feel. Or I do know how to feel, but it's not practical. So I need to get the job done and move forward. So
Do you have an example of the opposite when she does something that is painful to you or triggers you?
yes.
Would you probably come a little closer to the mic? Yeah.
Yes. So when, she's going to listen to this, so, so if
What is
she's
her name?
Selena, we have the
Selena.
same name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here comes Selena.
Yeah.
Brace yourself.
So if she's like, she's running late, time. I
Yeah.
mean, so she's running late and something happens, and that's kind of like a little moment of crisis, and she's going in circles, but she's late, but she won't, and I'm like, let me help you solve it. And it drives me up the wall because I'm like, I can help you. And she just needs to go around in circles and talk about it and express it. And she's late, so it's causing her more stress. So it's a vicious circle that drives me crazy. And her too. So if there are any strategies that help or
Yeah.
therapy, I don't know.
Are we doomed? Yeah. So I don't know what you've already tried. I don't know what hasn't worked. I mean, what hasn't worked?
I've learned, when I remember, to ask her if she wants help or if she just needs to vent. I've learned to do that, and sometimes I forget. And on the other hand, when I give her a solution, sometimes she stops me and she says, I understand you're trying to help me. Let me finish. So and these are things she's taught me from what she's learned from you guys. So thank you. But still, it's painful.
Yeah. So I think that is a brilliant piece of information. And I'm so glad that it's traced back to us, which is checking in first, right? Like going, do you need a solution, or do you just need to talk and vent? Right. That's great. And that I'm assuming that when you do that consistently works.
Yeah.
Okay. So It's just a matter of getting it into muscle memory. Okay. So you just have to do it enough times so that it's like an autoresponder. It's like every time she starts talking, your brain goes, do you want a solution or do you just need to vent? And I'm assuming that 9 times out of 10, she just needs to vent. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go the flip side, which is when she needs to vent, but she's late. Right? Or she's late for something. Is that the situation?
Or I'm late for something and she needs to vent.
Right.
Oh, now we're getting to the real of it.
Yeah.
The real story's coming out now.
Yeah.
So anybody who uses extroverted feeling or harmony, which for an INFJ is her second cognitive function, her auxiliary, we call it the co-pilot, they understand needs really well, all right? And you might try to put it in the language of needs, which is, I have a need going unmet. What's your need? I need to be on time, right? I have to be on, I need that. I need that for myself. I need it so that I feel like I'm respecting my value of keeping time. So that need is going unmet for me right now. And it's clear that you have a need, which is to vent. So we have to figure out whose need is the more critical one in this moment. And if you give her a hierarchy of needs, like which one is the more important one, and say, my need to be on time is part of my value system. I'm assuming it is, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it drives you crazy, is
Yes.
because you're compromising your values. Right? Now, that's the moment of. But people with your type preferences are really good at being proactive and setting systems up before they even are needed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would have this conversation as soon as possible, which is, I absolutely want to be here for you and listen, and I will totally do that. And sometimes I find myself in a situation where I'm compromising my personal value of timekeeping. Now, the challenge here is that to somebody with INFJ preferences, it depends, of course, on the individual, but they might always see the human need as more important than the resource need. And the resource need of timekeeping might always feel like it's less important than clearly a human that has a problem or has a need to vent. So that's the conversation I would have, right? It's not about resource. It's about identity. When I'm late, it's not just that I'm eating up time or valuing time over you as a human. I have an identity value around being late. So every time I'm late, I take a hit. As a person, I take a hit. And I'm willing to do that for you. I've done it a million times, and I'm willing to do a million more. And I just want you to understand what the true cost is to me. That's really what we're working with. So in certain situations, I'm going to say, whose need is more? And remember, this is associated with identity and values for me. That's what's on the table. So if there's a moment where you really actually truly need to vent, and this is big enough, your need is big enough to give me a personal hit, I will absolutely be there for you. I will trust that you have the discernment to determine that. Now, one of the challenges is that she does have INFJ preferences. Sometimes INFJs have a hard time asking for what they need. And she might feel that that's you saying, you're not allowed to come to me and vent anymore. I won't hear your need. And I would proactively say, that's not what I'm saying at all. Right? Please come to me when you have a need. Right? It helps. I mean, as a mother, it feels good to get your kids' needs met. Mm-hmm. That's also part of your identity.
Yeah.
Right? So actually what's crazy is that those moments are creating conflict of identity and values for you.
Yeah.
Which is why they drive you crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's not like I don't want to be here for you and I do not want to shut you down and I do not want to say that I am not here for you when you have a need. Please do not take that message. And this is the situation I find myself in. And you might even say, how do you think we should solve it? Right?
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh.
And just see what emerges.
Send mom to a podcast. That's how we do it. That's how we solve this.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we keep rolling along. Come on up. I think is this our last person tonight? Do I have somebody? This is our last. Yeah. Okay. So your name is
My name is Shin Guy.
Shin Guy. Hold on, let me make sure your microphone's adjusted here. Shin Guy, where are you from?
Santa Cruz, California.
You came from California to be with us in Nashville?
Yes, I did.
Yes. I love it. What's your best fit type?
Honestly, a little uncertain, but at the moment it seems like INTJ.
INTJ. Okay. And do you have a question?
I do have a question. I don't remember your exact wording earlier, but you were talking about the shadow functions and basically saying that we can't access our unconscious on our own. We need someone to reflect it back to us. I'm wondering if dreams can be an exception to that. Can our dreams help us connect with our subconscious, access our shadow functions? I know Jung was very into dreams, so we'd love to just hear you riff on that concept.
So I have a question for you before you answer this. Do you have dreams that you get insights from?
Yes.
All the time.
It's a personal question. It's something that maybe impacts your life. You get these dreams and you're like, am I getting good information from this? Am I able to see things reflected back to me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. It's a good question.
I think it's a fantastic question. And I don't know, but I think yes. I suspect that it's our unconscious, right? And dreams are gonna deliver information. Now, is it gonna give us really solid shadow content that really helps us reflect on the stuff that we don't want to see? I don't know. I don't have those kinds of dreams. Do you have those kinds of dreams?
I do. I have very intense, very vivid dreams, ranging from sort of having dreams and then having things play out in my real life that are eerily similar, to just having parts of myself that are vulnerable and like afraid, just like come at me in my dreams like very vividly. So
introverted intuition, man. I don't even get it. I don't even know how that stuff works. I mean, I'm supposed to because it's my job, but
you have vivid dreams, right? Of being chased by a mob trying to kill you?
That's true. I do have
for
that
saying
dream.
the wrong thing.
Yeah, no, that is a dream. Yeah, yeah, my dreams are very architectural. I always have like buildings that I'm exploring, but I don't have dreams that are like, here's the thing you don't want to see about yourself. I don't have that one, unless the angry mob is actually trying to tell me something, which is actually probably very much what's happening. So now I have to consider that. That said, I do think it probably yes, I think your introverted intuition is probably delivering very interesting content and information to you about your shadow. How consistent is it, and how much will it reflect back to you in like the same way that, say, another person who's triggering you and getting you really upset and mad is going to do? I think that's usually a little bit more in the moment rich shadow content if we can receive it, because it gives an example. Like we're having an experience. This is an example. It has very real world application. And dreams usually have to be interpreted and sussed out and figured out. So I do think that shadow material and unconscious material is visiting you in dreams. And it might be just a little abstract and inscrutable sometimes. And you might have to sort of figure it out. I also think, I mean, on the subject of the other kinds of things that can reflect this back to us, I think there are tools that can substitute for people if we don't have somebody that we can have that psyche-to-psyche experience with. One thing that I know is a pretty decent tool for people diving into their unconscious is things like tarot, right? They'll do tarot readings, and I mean, you can say that, interpret it as like the universe giving you specific messages, or you can just say, what is my unconscious trying to tell me here, right? And allow your own, imagination to deliver information to you. So I would say that dreams are probably similar to things like tarot. It's like it's a tool that you're using to dive a little deeper and trying to figure out what your mind is already attempting to communicate. So short answer is yes. Long answer is tools are very helpful, and I still think that humans are some of the fastest, richest shadow content if we let them be. Tools are safe. They're 1 degree of separation. Sometimes they give us good information because they're not triggering, but the content isn't as potent, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Of course.
So how useful is it when we are triggered in the context of someone we don't have a direct personal relationship with? So I get triggered by like the news a lot, like politicians, public figures, like that triggers me often more than people I actually know. So how useful is that?
Well, that's
sort of?
nice because then you don't have to get mad at the people in your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice problem now, or challenge.
Super helpful.
Okay.
Super helpful. In fact, whole societies have shadows, right? And oftentimes our shadow matches. Sometimes our shadow content matches the shadow of the culture that we're in. That would make sense. But actually, what's interesting, and Dr. John Beebe talks about that. He says that we can't even, as a nation or culture, understand our shadow until another culture or nation reflects it back to us. And so news, politics, international politics, all of this is rich with shadow information.
So it's healthy that I spend so much time getting mad about the news.
Well, if you're using it for self-understanding, because here's the deal. When we get triggered and we go, you're the problem, that's not shadow work. When we get triggered and we go, I'm the problem, how am I the problem? That's shadow work.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I'm working on
And
it.
some people are chasing dopamine hits from getting triggered. Like, that's the thing. So you don't seem like a person. Maybe you are chasing dopamine hits. Like, you're getting a hit every time you get triggered reading news. Is that?
I think when I was younger, not so much anymore.
Yeah.
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 I have to be careful with that because, like, I feel like I'm like, oh, what's going on in the world? And I want to, like, get a hit of something new. And it's like, I'm not really looking for real information. I want to have that feeling of, like, being connected or getting a quick hit. It's like a snack through the day. But it sounds like you're actually sitting down, you're listening to the thoughts and the conversations and all of that. And it's, like, deeply unsettling to you.
Exactly. Yeah, I have this like desire to deeply understand like what's happening, what's going to happen, and so that's like why I pay attention. Is I'm trying to sort of project and protect myself, and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, and it can happen incidentally. Like you read something or see something and it can trigger you, or you can go seek it. Like intentionally. One of the things I've done is I've intentionally subscribed to magazines or like online blogs of people who have 180-degree opinions from me. And I read them, I'm like, oh my God, they're so stupid. And I'll do it for like 365 days. Every single day, I'll read these thoughts of these people. And then my job is to figure out how they're right. My job is to figure out why I'm getting triggered. What is this reflecting back about myself that I don't want to see, right? Because if it exists, there's some truth in it. Nobody, and I said this earlier today, so this is a repeat for people who were here earlier, but nobody worships a teacup that, revolving around the moon, because there is no teacup that's orbiting around the moon. So there is no religion for that, right? Everything that has any sort of weight to it or exists has some truth in it. And I feel like it's my job to figure out what that truth is. And it might be this little vein of gold surrounded by all this refuse, right? But what am I getting triggered by? I'm not usually getting triggered by nothing. I'm getting triggered by something. And the thing I'm getting triggered by, the something I'm getting triggered by, has some measure of truth in it. So why do I find this truth so destabilizing? And that's using this for shadow work, right? What's the truth I don't want to see because it reflects something back to me that I don't want to see?
Yeah, I can see how that would be very helpful. It's so easy for me to focus on what is wrong. I know that there's truth there, but I don't want to focus on it because I'm just like, no, but like that's wrong, that's inaccurate, even though I know there's truth there. So.
Yeah. Now, it's not necessarily a complete truth.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, a complete truth is a totally different bird. All right. Some truth is different than a complete truth. And people take little bits of truth and they just gerrymander it and mutilate it and like turn it all around. And that does happen too. And that's infuriating, particularly certain types of us that are like, I need the pure truth. So that does happen. And sometimes it's the, it's the willingness to treat information with such disregard and disrespect that can be triggering. And then that tells you that you have a value around treating truth with respect. That's what it will tell you. And so that's a good piece of information too. And at the same time, sometimes that reflects back to us that we will also do the same. We will also gerrymander the truth, and we will also change it to suit our agenda and purposes. And that's the thing we don't want to look at, right? So it's like, what is this triggering thing trying to tell me about myself, and how can I be as open to it as possible? And over time, what was it? I think it was Jonathan Haidt in Coddling of the American Mind said that all the psychological studies show that the way to get over triggers isn't to avoid them, it's to lean into them. It's to seek them. Right? Getting triggered and learning how to deal with trigger and getting to the other side is the only way to actually no longer be triggered. So part of the reason why I did this thing too is because I just didn't want to be triggerable anymore. Right? And over time, I mean, I still get triggered. Of course, I'm human. Every person gets triggered, right? And that's my soft selling it. I should just say full stop. I still get triggered and not have to like cushion the blow by saying, I'm a human. We all get triggered. No, I just get triggered, right? Whether or not everybody else is. And I'm way less triggerable than I was before because I leaned into it and I intentionally did it. And over time I went, why am I letting this get to me? So there is that benefit too, whether or not it's like deep shadow material. It's also just inures you to it and gets you to a point where you're like, it's fine.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Give him a hand. Well, it was exciting to have everybody here and a lot of great questions and conversation. Thank you, everybody, for this. If you've been watching at home or listening along and you would like to express yourself because you weren't able to come up to one of the microphones we had here with our live recorded audience, come over to personalityhacker.com directly below this episode. You can leave a comment, ask a question, or more importantly, share your story. I love stories because they're compressed experiences. We get a sense of who you are, what you've been through in a very compressed space, and we can get a conversation started. People can offer advice. We can see where you're coming from, what your experience and perspective is. So come on over to personalityhacker.com and make your voice heard.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, you can subscribe to us on iTunes and various Android platforms. If you leave a rating and review for us on iTunes, it really helps us out a lot. You may be watching us on YouTube. And if you enjoyed this episode, you can like, subscribe, and hit the little bell that lets you know when a new episode comes out. We have a book. It's called Personality Hacker. It's available at all major book retailers. And if you leave us a rating and review on Amazon or on Goodreads, that also helps us out a lot.
My name is Joe Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we want to thank our live recorded studio audience here in Nashville for being with us tonight. We want to do more of these and maybe even come to a city or an area near you. We'll talk to you on the next Personality Hacker podcast.